a border only 2.5 miles wide. Yet it might be the most heavily fortified line on Earth. Soldiers face each other across barbed wire, landmines, and concrete barriers. Cameras track every movement. Birds, oddly enough, are the only ones that cross freely. And somewhere in that eerie silence lies a question that shaped millions of lives. How did one Korea become two? To understand that split, rewind to a time when the idea of North and South Korea would have sounded like nonsense. For over 1,000 years, the peninsula rose and fell as a single cultural sphere. Shared language, shared dynasties, shared wars and victories. Outsiders might have seen just another small kingdom in East Asia. But to Koreans, identity ran deep, layered with tradition, Confucian values, and pride in resisting foreign control. But there was one invader they could not push back: Japan. In 1910, Korea was annexed by the Japanese Empire, beginning 35 years of harsh colonial rule. For many Koreans, this era is remembered through stories whispered across generations. Grandparents recalling how speaking Korean could get them punished, how names were forcibly changed to Japanese ones, how resistance movements formed in the shadows. Yet beneath the oppression, something else was happening. Modern industry was spreading, cities growing, ideologies fermenting. The world was changing and Korea was changing with it. By the mid-1940s, Japan's empire was crumbling. The Second World War was burning toward its finale. And here is where an extraordinary twist appears, one that would reshape the peninsula forever. As Japan neared defeat in 1945, the United States and the Soviet Union suddenly needed to decide what to do with Korea. The plan came together in a rush, almost improvised. Two American officers, Dean Rusk and Charles Bonesteel, were tasked with proposing a dividing line for temporary military occupation. They had about 30 minutes. Leafing through a National Geographic map, they picked the 38th parallel. It sliced the country almost arbitrarily, giving the Soviets control of the northern half and the Americans the south. It was never meant to be permanent. It was a stopgap, a convenience, a line chosen in haste. But history is full of moments where convenience becomes destiny. When Japan surrendered in August 1945, the Soviets swept into northern Korea, disarming Japanese troops and establishing administrative control. The Americans arrived weeks later in the south, inheriting a region shaken by food shortages, political turmoil, and a population eager to seize independence. Both halves believed they were simply removing the last traces of colonialism. Neither anticipated they would soon be shaping two very different Koreas. North of the line, the Soviets backed a rising political figure, Kim Il-sung, a guerrilla fighter with a reputation for defying the Japanese. He was charismatic, young, and ideologically aligned with Moscow. In Pyongyang, factories nationalized, land was redistributed, and a state-centered system began to take form. Soviet advisors guided the structure, but Kim Il-sung crafted the message, a proud, self-reliant Korea rising from oppression. In the South, life could not have been more different. A mix of political factions, from communists to conservatives to nationalists, jockeyed for control. The Americans threw their support behind Syngman Rhee, Princeton-educated, fiercely anti-communist, and determined to rule with a strong hand. But the South faced deeper unrest. Farmers demanded land reform, students demanded political change. Former collaborators with Japanese authorities still held influence. It was messy, volatile, and often violent. By 1948, what was supposed to be temporary occupation had drifted into stalemate. As Cold War tensions sharpened globally, the peninsula became a spotlight for ideological rivalry. Separate governments formed, the Republic of Korea in the south and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in the north. Both declared themselves the only legitimate Korea. Both prepared for the possibility that reunification would require force. The spark came in June 1950, Backed with Soviet support and believing the South was weak, North Korean troops surged across the 38th parallel. Seoul fell within days. The Korean War had begun, a conflict so brutal that survivors still describe it with haunted eyes. Cities were obliterated. Families fled into the mountains, hiding in caves. Lines shifted constantly, dragging civilians into the chaos of war. The United States intervened under the banner of the United Nations. China entered months later, sending waves of troops to support the North. Each side believed victory was near. Each side was wrong. 3 years later, millions were dead, yet the borders were almost exactly where they had begun. In 1953, an armistice halted the fighting, but crucially, no peace treaty was ever signed. Korea remained divided not just by ideology but by trauma. Refugee families split overnight. Stories emerged of siblings separated during evacuations, believing they would reunite soon, only to grow old on opposite sides of a border they could never cross. In the North, Kim Il-sung built a powerful cult of personality. The economy initially outpaced the South, fueled by Soviet aid and heavy industry. In Pyongyang, grand monuments rose, testifying to a narrative of revolutionary heroism. But over time, isolation hardened into policy. The government tightened its grip. Information vanished behind state propaganda, and everyday life became intertwined with ideological loyalty. The South took a different road. Syngman Rhee ruled with authoritarian force before being ousted by mass protests. Subsequent military governments brought stability and development at a steep cost to political freedom. But by the 1980s and 90s, democratization movements transformed the country. The economy surged, skyscrapers filled the skyline, and South Korea emerged as a global cultural powerhouse. One peninsula, two nations, two destinies shaped by war, ideology, and the choices of leaders long gone. And yet, despite the decades, the border remains a strange relic of unfinished history. Families still send letters through intermediaries, never sure if they'll reach their loved ones. Occasional diplomatic breakthroughs spark hope, only to collapse under political pressure. Every handshake between leaders is treated like a potential turning point. Every setback feels like a return to square one. The division of Korea was not inevitable. It was not ancient. It was not the result of irreconcilable cultures or centuries-old hatred. It was a moment, 30 minutes with a map, that collided with the Cold War and snowballed into one of the world's most enduring geopolitical fractures. A line that was meant to be temporary became an international fault line, separating families, shaping global politics, and creating two Koreas that today stand worlds apart. Yet ask ordinary Koreans on either side what they hope for in the distant future, and many will give the same answer: that one day, somehow, the line will fade, the border will open, and the story of Korea might return to being one story again, shared, complex, and whole.